All right, ladies and gentlemen, we have the makings of a long meeting today, so I think we'll get started. Thank you, everybody, for coming early. I'm pleased to call to order public meeting number 91. 91 of the Massachusetts Gaming Commission at 9 o'clock at the Boston Convention Center on November 21st, 2013. First item on the agenda, as always, is the approval of the minutes. Commissioner McHugh.
We have two sets of minutes, Mr. Chairman, the November 7 and November 14. The November 7 minutes are in tab 2A. I would move that they be accepted as written with the reservation of the right to correct any mechanical or typographical errors.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? Anybody have any issues? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it unanimously.
The second set of minutes, those for November 14, 2013, are in tab 2B of the books. I would make the same motion that the minutes be accepted as they appear in the book, reserving the right to correct any mechanical or typographical errors.
Second? Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it unanimously. And then we now get to item number 3, research and problem gambling. We are starting, I guess, is that right?
I believe, Mr. Chairman, that has been moved to December 5th.
Reorganized it?
That item
That item's been moved.
been moved to the December 5th meeting.
Okay. So we will talk about the legislative report on research activities, now that you mentioned, I do remember that, to our next meeting. So we go to Ombudsman Ziemba and the Ombudsman's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, Mr. Chairman, today we hear a number of petitions. We are deciding on a number of petitions for surrounding community status. On or before October 31st of this year, the Commission received 9 surrounding community petitions. 5 petitions remain outstanding. Dayton and Bridgewater relating to the Raynham Park LLC applicant, and Bolton, Fitchburg, and Sterling relating to the PPE Casino Resorts LLC applicant. Of the remaining 4 communities, all of which relate to the Raynham Park applicant, Middleborough was designated as a surrounding community on November 11. Berkeley signed a nearby community agreement on November 18. Lakeville signed a nearby community agreement on November 18. Rehoboth executed a nearby community agreement on November 18. The Commission has already conducted 4 public hearings during which testimony was received from communities seeking a surrounding community designation on November 14th of this year and October 21 through 23. Communities that are designated as surrounding communities have the authority to participate as surrounding communities in the host community hearings scheduled for December 3rd through 5th. In addition, upon designation as a surrounding community, such communities will have 30 days to negotiate a surrounding community agreement with applicants prior to the onset of arbitration if necessary. In order for applications to be complete, agreements with all designated surrounding communities must be reached. Yesterday, the Commission received a letter from the town of Seekonk asking to be designated as a surrounding community. As this letter was received well past the original deadline for surrounding community petitions, October 4th, and also well past the extension to October 31st, it is not being presented to the Commission for decision.
And they know that?
We called them yesterday, but I did not reach them. We received the application yesterday.
Okay.
This does not preclude their ability to reach a voluntary agreement with the applicant as long as it is done today, and to the degree that anything is reached in future days, that would require a further variance from the Commission, because today is the deadline for designations or agreements.
When you called them, did you leave them that message? Do they know that? Yeah.
I did not, because
All right. Now, and it wouldn't preclude them from having access to the Community Mitigation Fund, which is in the legislation for other issues, right?
that's correct.
You don't have to be a surrounding community to get access to the Community Mitigation Fund if there are problems.
That's correct.
Right, okay.
As was noted in my November 5th memorandum and as presented at the November 7th Commission meeting, staff and outside consultants to the commission put together reports on each surrounding community petition, which are included in your packets. These reports include details from the petitions made by the communities, responses by the applicants, reviews completed by regional planning agencies, reviews that were made part of the MIPA process, and consultant and staff reviews of such submissions. The reports have been arranged to correspond with the applicable section of our surrounding community regulations. Now I'd like to give you a brief summary of each petition with a commission discussion and determination after each. We are joined, I hope, I know that there is a couple of folks still in transit, by representatives from Green International, Mark Vanderlinden, and Jennifer Pink, who worked with our sub-consultant on housing issues. I hope they are here.
So let me just restate this to make sure it's clear to everybody who's watching. So there are 5 communities who have petitioned to become designated as surrounding communities, and there is a dispute between the applicant and the community as to whether or not they should be a surrounding community, and they are therefore petitioning us to make the decision, which is a decision we are authorized to make in our enabling legislation about whether or not they are a surrounding community. And we'll go through those 5 communities one by one, and the commission will make a decision in this public meeting.
Great. Just one further bit of background. We have received, there have been a number of agreements that have been reached up to this date. As we discussed, the commission extended the deadline for surrounding community petitions in order to allow communities and applicant more time to reach conclusions that were not based on an adversarial process. And to date, we've received surrounding community agreements from Mansfield, North Attleboro, and Rentham. Foxborough has been designated as a surrounding community by the Penn applicant. Further PPE-related agreements, Lancaster, Lunenburg, Townsend, Westminster, and Princeton. And Raynham has reached agreements with Taunton as a surrounding community agreement, and Berkeley, Lakeville, and Rehoboth as nearby impact agreements. We have certain designations where each community, the communities that have been designated as a surrounding community by the applicant, under our regulations, those communities must assent to such designation. And we have received from Foxborough, Middleborough, and West Bridgewater letters of assent to such designation. Under our regulations, the 30-day clock to begin negotiations under the statutory 30-day negotiations does not begin until the commission issues a written determination after the receipt of the letter of assent by the communities. And as Council Blue is recommended, what we will do is, based after this meeting, after we conclude the surrounding community discussions, we will thereby issue staff written designations of assent to those communities that have sent those letters of assent. I don't think I've missed anybody, but in case I did, we'll go double check that. And so what that would do is, as we make determinations on surrounding community status for those that have petitioned, they would be on the same statutory 30-day time frame as those that have assented to such designation but have not reached an agreement as of yet.
So that's the 2 30-day windows would start.
That's right. Okay, in order to get into the applications, just let me give you, in the beginning of your packets, on page 2 of your packets, so the packets are broken down by applicant and by community. I will give you the page numbers as we go through the presentation. But so they, as I mentioned in the beginning, there are 3 for the PPE casino application.
Which is Cordish and Leominster.
Which is Cordish and Leominster, and that is Bolton, Fitchburg, and Sterling. And we'll go alphabetically through each one of these applications. But in page 1 of each one of these communities has a very specific packet, and the packet describes the 6 criteria that the commission should consider in making its determination. And the 6 criteria are proximity to both the host community and to the gaming facility, the impacts on the transportation infrastructure, development impacts that are related to the construction period, operational impacts. Our regulation has a catch-all for communities that determined that they're experiencing impacts that aren't readily caught in those above categories. And then 6, the regulation says that the commission may consider positive impacts in its determinations of surrounding community status
And these are the criteria that are set out in the law for us to use,
and our regulation.
and our regulations, right?
Okay, so let's turn to the Bolton applicant. So if you look at page 3. Of your packet. Is everybody there? So proximity, so as I mentioned, proximity both to the gaming establishment and to the host community is a criteria in our regulations. The town of Bolton claims that it is 5 miles to the east of the proposed facility and is closer than a number of communities that have already reached an agreement with the applicant. The applicant argues that the town of Bolton is more than 5 miles away from the facility, that the town center is approximately 8 miles from the facility, and that comparisons to other communities that have reached agreement with Bolton are irrelevant. Just one more background. So I am obviously just giving a summary of very lengthy and detailed presentations that have been made by both applicants and communities, and very, very detailed sections included in the applications and numerous other reviews. The commissioner's packet includes all of those sections. So, but for ease of reference, we've included this summary, but all of those sections that have been included in their remarks are obviously part of the question. So if communities or applicants out there are hearing only some of their arguments, what we've tried to do is distill some of the essence of what their petitions made. But as we discussed, we've already had 4 public hearings on it, and there's very detailed presentations.
And the audience should know that we all have that big folder like you have in front of you, and each of the commissioners has read, if not literally every word, at least virtually every word in these extended presentations on the issues.
So to continue on the proximity issue, during the commission's deliberation on surrounding community policies, the commission rejected establishing a mileage-based threshold for determining which communities are surrounding communities. And what that means is we determined that just because a community is within a mile or within 3 miles or within 5 miles, that does not mean that one reaches surrounding community status by that designation. And the reason why we did that, one of the reasons why we did that is because the legislature actually rejected amendments that would have said exactly that. They had amendments stating that a 1 mile threshold, a 3 mile threshold, or a 5 mile threshold would automatically make you a surrounding community. Instead, they asked us to take a look at the overall impacts, as I mentioned, in concert with a review of the geographic proximity. But I do mention that the legislature did include those amendments of the 2 miles, 3 miles, and 5 mile standard, perhaps as an indication that that they meant to have some limit to the outward geographic proximity. Again, we don't have a mileage-based standard, but this is a measuring guideline. It's not a hard and fast rule, as you'll see from our review of the petitions. Just because one community is within 2 miles or within 3 miles, again, that's an automatic determination of surrounding community status. But this measuring stick of 2, 3, 5 miles could perhaps be instructive as to some of the range of considerations that we could take a look at.
But I think that's a really important point, though, that people need to hear, that this is not about proximity alone. You know, the mere fact of being close is not in and of itself. What the legislation and we are concerned about is impacts. Independent, then maybe proximity can be sort of advisory to impacts, but it is impacts, not proximity, which are really determinative here.
That's right. Commissioners can move to page 10 of the packet. I'll discuss the traffic infrastructure. And, is Mr. Scully here?
He's here, John.
He's coming in right now. So I'm going to continue. I'm going to go through each one of the factors, and then we can go back to our experts with any further questions. In regard to infrastructure, the town of Bolton argues that Route 17 provides ready access to the proposed establishment for traffic off Route 495, and that according to the applicant, at least 250,000 new vehicle trips can be expected to pass through Bolton annually. Bolton contests the projections made by the applicant and state that it expects as many as 30 to 45% of the patrons will actually reach the applicant's facility by traveling Route 17 through Bolton, compared to the 11% projected by the applicant. Thus, the number of annual vehicle traps traveling through Bolton could approach 1 million. Bolton argues that those regularly travel Route 2 will avoid it and instead will utilize the Mass Turnpike, Route 495, and then Route 117. Bolton also argues that Route 117 is a heavily congested roadway with an approximately 3-hour rush between 4 and 7 p.m., where traffic slows from 10 to 15 miles an hour. The applicant states that its market study and traffic study show that there will be very limited impacts to roadways in the town, and that these impacts will be solely limited to Route 117. The applicant noted traffic studies completed to date show that the project will increase volumes at Route 117 I-495 northbound ramps intersection by only 2.2%. An estimated 54 p.m. peak hour vehicle trips will be added to the existing 2,480 vehicle trips passing through the intersection as reported by the town. Similarly, the applicant argues that the addition of 54 peak hour project trips on the western edge of Bolton represents a very modest 3.3% increase in traffic volumes, and that the same peak hour trips between I-495 and Route 110 will use less than 2% of the traffic capacity of Route 117. Further, the applicant argues that its traffic is countercyclical and is after the PM commuter to peak hour. Finally, the applicant notes that the attractiveness of Route 2 as an option will improve with planned improvements in Concord. A peer review conducted by Woodward and Curran in Transportation and Engineering Planning and Policy of the applicant's traffic impact study found that the study to reflect professional practice and that the proposed project appears to have minimal traffic impacts. Green International, who's sitting with us now, did a peer review of all of the traffic included in each one of these applicants, and they made the following findings. They made many findings, but I'll just reflect a few of them. Comments made from Mass DOT and contained in the E&F certificate indicate that at a minimum, the DEIR, the Draft Environmental Impact Report, should include both signalized intersections at the I-495 Route 117 interchange in the town of Bolton. This is directly due to the levels of casino-generated traffic as presented to date by the applicant that would travel to the project site in Leominster via I-495 and Route 17 from the south and east, respectively. The Stantec report, which is the traffic report by the applicant, assumes that 10% of the site traffic will use Route 117 to the east of I-190. The more detailed market analysis trip distribution presented by the project proponent indicates that approximately 13.5% of the site traffic will use Route 117 to the east of I-190, with approximately 11% traveling through the town of Bolton. Route 117, continuing with Green's analysis. Route 117 is the primary route through Bolton that would be used to access the Leominster site. It is primarily a 2-lane highway. Based on general observations and knowledge of the corridor, it operates with constraints at certain intersections, in particular at the I-495 interchange at Wattaquattack Hill Road in the Bolton Town Center, and the intersections Route 117, Route 70, and Route 10 in Lancaster during the weekday peak periods, as well as during portions of Saturday. There is a high probability that the use of I-495 and Route 117 has been underestimated, and that these noted traffic increases will be greater. In light of the several factors, including the relative close proximity that Bolton is to the proposed casino site, the direct route that Route 17 provides between I-495 and the project site, and the reach of the casino being between 60 and 90 miles, and that there would not be any other nearby competing facility, it is conceivable, in our opinion, at this stage, that the applicant's trip projections to the east along Route 117 may be low. It is likely that patrons of the site would avoid the I-95 Route 2 route due to more congested conditions often experienced on I-95 relative to I-495, and the several bottlenecks along Route 2 in the towns of Lincoln, Concord, and Acton, i.e. traffic signals along Route 2 and or the Concord Rotary. It is conceivable that Route 117 in Bolton could provide access for 20% or more of the traffic-related trips. If that were to occur, the increases in traffic on Route 117 would exceed 5% and approach and exceed 5% and approach and exceed 10% during certain periods and become more significant and measurable impact. As a result of the level of casino-related traffic estimated to pass through the town of Bolton while traveling through to the casino site based on the information that has been reviewed and evaluated, and based on the above factors considered in this surrounding community evaluation, it is our opinion that there would be a significant and adverse traffic impact.
Can I make a suggestion here? Were you about to? Go ahead. Well, if I'm saying this correctly, our job here is to determine whether or not a community is a surrounding community.
Yep.
On any one of these criteria, we could make that determination. If we were to make it on an early criteria, it doesn't matter what the other criteria say.
Yep.
Since we have an objective review here on the issue of traffic that differs from the applicant's assessment, it seems to me, but I'm going to ask the commissioners whether you agree with this, that it's worth us stopping now, talking about traffic. If it turned out that we thought this was a circumstance which required them to become surrounding community, we wouldn't have to go through the rest of the issues.
Well, that's an interesting point that I was thinking about that the other day, Mr. Chairman, and it could be an all or nothing kind of thing. On the other hand, I'm not sure that if there's a traffic impact, and that's the only impact that causes a town to be a surrounding community, that the commission would then advance money for housing studies or problem gambling studies or other kinds of things, or that the commission would anticipate that the parties would enter into a surrounding community agreement that would include those criteria and perhaps get hung up on those criteria when a traffic mitigation plan could be achieved and solve the only problem for which the commission found them to be a surrounding community. So I wonder if it wouldn't be at least helpful. I don't think our regulations really provide for us to say you're a surrounding community for traffic purposes only. But
I wasn't saying that.
No, I understand that. I understand that. But it seems to me that it would be helpful to say what, for the commission to say what it was that triggered the commission's surrounding community determination, and both to provide guidance for us in the future and to provide guidance for the parties who are going to attempt to negotiate a surrounding community agreement. That would mean going through each of these. Doesn't mean we can't stop here and discuss traffic, but it would mean going through these and saying, if it turns out that traffic is the only one that gets them in.
I completely agree with that notion. I think this may make today a very long meeting, but I think it's very important that we discuss, weigh in on what we think is a factor or factors that that make somebody a surrounding community, and that, in my opinion, would hopefully guide the arbitration process but first the negotiation process and then eventually the arbitration process that could result from this. Now, as I understand, in an arbitration process, all factors could conceivably be considered, whether we thought one was significant or not. But I completely agree with the notion that it's important for us to at least discuss, weigh in, and opine on the significance of factors, of each of the factors that they put forward.
I will note that although my last summary was rather involved, each one of these applications is different. In Bolton, the application by the potential surrounding community was very, very detailed when it came to traffic. But among the other factors, there wasn't that much detail. So I spent a good amount of time on that application. So if we're thinking that we're going to be here for 4 or 5 days, that's probably not going to be the case. But I know that preview probably didn't give you much comfort.
Well, I was
Probably not going to be the case?
Go ahead.
Well, and I would agree with Commissioner McEwen. Commissioner Zuniga, and the other piece of this is one of the 6 criteria are the positive impacts, and that could be a weighing mechanism for us as well. So I think it's important to discuss it all.
So does that mean, are you suggesting that, so we would go through each of the criteria and we would say, because of criteria, if we say they're not surrounding community, that's one thing, but if there is, we would say which criteria we judge to be the trigger mechanism, and does that then preclude the other criteria?
No, it doesn't, I don't think, as a matter of law, but it does guide the communities if they come to us, say, and want to get money for a housing study, and we've already found that the housing isn't a piece. It guides them and us in dealing with that, and it also guides our determination as to what the triggers are, guides the applicant and the community as to the focus we think they ought to put into a surrounding community agreement, which may make it easier for them to reach one than if the door for everything is wide open.
I was pretty sure I was going to win 5-0 on this, but I was wrong. All right, that's fine. Okay, good, let's go ahead.
Were you done with the introduction?
Yes. Well, I've just a few other sections, development, operation, other, and positive impact.
Because I do have a general question for our consultants that applies to just about everybody. So, but let's continue,
Okay.
and we'll get to that.
Development, so this relates to impacts prior to operation, construction impacts, et cetera. Town of Bolton argues that it is inevitable that a significant portion of the construction vehicles will use the shortcut from 495 through Bolton. The applicant states that it will direct its construction team to avoid local roads and to utilize the major highways for all construction traffic. Furthermore, it states the town cannot demonstrate that any noise or environmental issues, if any, caused by the project will have a significant or adverse impact on the town. Green International found that the applicant has stated that construction-related heavy vehicle traffic would be controlled and remain on the area's major roadways. With I-190 adjacent to the site, this would be expected to provide the major route of access for transporting materials to the site, particularly long-haul trips. However, there is a potential for I-495 use, and with that, the potential for Route 117 to be used by non-local construction traffic. While it is fairly early in the process to know definitively the sources of materials, construction traffic, and the source of materials would be controlled to a large degree by the applicant. This would be important with respect to minimize the potential use of 114 by this type of traffic. If you turn to page 48, this discusses operation. The town of Bolton argues that increased traffic volumes and the fact that the facility serves alcohol will increase the number of accidents and arrests or related mutual aid calls. The applicant includes letters from the Leominster Police and Fire Departments stating that they do not expect any mutual aid from Bolton. Further, the applicant notes that the addition of Leominster Police Station at the facility, in addition to State Police and Gaming Commission personnel. Finally, the applicant notes that based on a review of the crash data along Route 117, projected traffic would result in less than 3 incidents per year. There is no description in other. They were adequately captured in the other categories. And then in positive impacts, the applicant noted several positive impacts from the development, including approximately $20 million that may be spent annually on local goods and services. And obviously, I'm not going to go into depth about each one of these applications, but each one of these applications obviously comes with a very significant new employees at the facilities, impacts through purchases and others in the general area and in the region, significant revenues that can be attributable to the host communities, and obviously very significant revenues that will be received by the state, among many other positive impacts. And so that concludes the 6 factors, and we welcome any questions you may have.
I had a couple. In your prior remarks, earlier remarks, you were reading off of this, and you mentioned Route 17, but every time you were referring to it, it's really Route 117. I just wanted to make that
Yeah, I might have
extra
skipped a
clear.
one there, yep.
Yes. I had a general question in traffic, on traffic that applies to just about everybody, so might as well ask it now. I know that there's a lot of analysis that gets to particular intersections and where the flow is coming from and what level of usage is currently and anticipated, et cetera. But as I read through this packet, I wondered if both sets of applicants or the two applicants in question here start from generally the same amount of overall traffic that could come to each of these facilities. The analysis is very different, has been done by a couple of different parties, obviously, has been verified by our consultants, but I did wonder if they're both generally talking about the same total number of vehicle trips per day.
Approximately. Oh, is this on?
Should be on.
Yeah, you're
Should
on.
be, I think.
Approximately, they are. They both forecast the traffic in different ways. On the Raynham Park side, DOT has asked for more supporting documentation and to look at a different method of forecasting. But in terms of total, Raynham might be a little bit higher in their numbers right now, but they're roughly the same.
Okay, that's,
So I
thank you.
think it's been reported to me that, for example, Raynham uses the method that has been pushed forward by DOT, which is you take 3 comparable facilities and you do some of the analysis based on that. Is that correct, Bill? But that their numbers actually might be a little bit conservative in relation to that DOT method, if I understand what they do.
Well, I apologize for it's probably more opposite John on that one. Leominster, I think, went with the approach, and they may even have to provide more supporting documentation as they go into the environmental process with the state. But the method used in Raynham, it was actually being questioned by DOT in terms of, for an example, they used the size of the building as opposed to the number of gaming positions. And right now, in the industry, it appears the gaming positions start to become the predominant variable that you base your casino forecast on. And you might even be thinking, John, on the Plainville site, too, that
No,
did
no,
look
I
at
think I was-
multiple
I think what we said is
observations. And
Matches.
so,
Thank you.
Other questions?
Mr. Scully, did you have anything further to add to John's analysis of your expert opinion that there would be a significant increase in traffic? So what you're really saying is you disagree with the initial report that the applicant had prepared?
yes. In looking at the criteria, the various factors for traffic impact of the project on Bolton, in our opinion, they do have the potential for being, to experience an adverse impact. There are issues on that corridor, but that corridor does bring them directly to the casino from 495. And 495 to 117 to Route 2 is a very major route that people use as a, quote, shortcut or alternate way as opposed to going up to Route 2.
And your analysis is, you're only evaluating the additional traffic, not, your analysis does not, the road is already congested, in other words, so you are looking at just what the new traffic would be due to this facility?
Correct.
Okay.
Others?
The applicant says that the traffic is going to be counter-cyclical. I gather that by that it means it is going to be, traffic to their facility is going to occur at times when the rush hour is not in progress. Did you find any basis for that in the papers you reviewed?
Yes, they are correct in a large degree. Certainly the morning peak commuting time, very busy on any of the roadways, including 117, and you would expect the casino traffic to be fairly low in the morning peak hour. But in the afternoon, in the PM peak hour, for an example, what our research has shown is while Friday evening, let's say after 6 o'clock, maybe between 6 and 8 becomes a very busy time for casino-related traffic generation. The PM, the commuter time, particularly that Thursday, Friday time period, is another very busy time for the casino-related. So while there may be some differing peaks, it's not all, post-commuter or, yes, it's the casino itself, peak generation will occur later in the evening on a Friday or on a Saturday, but it still showed fairly busy movement on the PM peak hour and as well as the midday Saturday peak hours.
Others?
And it's especially the off-ramps from 495 to 117, that area that causes the highest level of concern, as well as the other intersection. I'm not going to be able to pronounce it without reading it.
Wattaquatic Road.
Yes.
What you have on 117 is you do have the ramps at I-495. Those are under traffic signal control. Those are controlled by Mass DOT. There are, right now, during the peak travel hours, fairly severe issues at the ramps. And it doesn't go on for 3, 4, 5 hours. It tends to be concentrated during the peak commuting times. What you have then is a 2-lane road, a very highly traveled road during those peak times. So Wattaquatic Road is an unsignalized intersection. So movement out of that will depend on gaps in traffic along 117. So right now they do have trouble at that intersection. It's similar to, I know this is in Lancaster, but Route 70 at 117, another unsignalized. If you have that type of an intersection, it's the people trying to exit onto the main street have to wait for that gap in traffic to safely make their movement. As you begin to experience problems on the main line and you add another 50 or 100 or 150 vehicles going past that point, then the number of gaps and your size of gaps continues to decrease. So I'm not saying that they're creating a problem. There is a problem during the peak times at that intersection and those types of intersections. They probably feel the effect a bit more when you add that 50 to 100 more vehicles on 117 than sometimes a signal will do. And away from 495, the last thing I'll just mention is the road does come under local jurisdiction. So even though it's a numbered route for the state, Mass Highway may help them fund projects to fix the road at times. That 117 corridor, it does come under the town of Bolton ownership.
But if I understood, this is not about that intersection. Everybody's taking the position that that intersection is going to be dealt with separately. That's not an issue of whether Bolton is a surrounding community or not. The issue with whether Bolton's a surrounding community or not is from the intersection through Bolton to Lancaster, not about the intersection per se. Do I have that right?
In the intersect, you're saying
117 and 495.
495?
That's a state issue which is going to be dealt with at the state level.
The state is looking at that location. I'm just reporting the point that it's a location or two locations that do experience problems, and that the applicant's engineer has forecasted a fairly measurable amount of casino-related traffic will be added through that point. We've just made an assessment that says the amount of traffic coming through that point could be more than what they say, somewhat more. And that's what we know we're adding amount of traffic. It is an existing situation. And the road does connect then directly to the casino. So that was how those factors were pretty much set up.
But we're not excluding consideration of that intersection from our traffic analysis. Was that?
I'm not sure that it really matters, but I didn't think that Bolton was making the claim to be a surrounding community because of the impact on the intersection. I thought that everybody agreed that that was an issue, but that was going to be dealt at the state level. It was not that intersection per se, which would they cause them to be a surrounding community. It was what they're concerned about, and I thought this is what was talking about, is the local streets is one, and 117 and its access roads after cars get off 495 and get onto 117. As I said, I'm not sure this is really relevant, but that was this write-up is not about the intersection per se. It's about the consequences of increases from that intersection across Bolton.
Right. I agree, Commissioner, with that statement that Bolton is concerned about Route 117, which is why I said that corridor is
Right.
aside from the ramps, is
Right.
owned by the town and maintained by the town. The point of the ramps is that's really the beginning
I understand that. I
of
understand, yeah.
that casino traffic coming into town and on 117.
Others? You know, your report, I mean, I thought the applicant's position was not very credible when I very first heard it, and read about it, read it and heard it. And from my own personal experience of accessing that area, and by the way, probably the preponderance of the emails that we get, the correspondence that we get, of which we get a ton, from this area concerns 117, and when we had public testimony, there was tremendous amount of public testimony about people who access 117 from their homes and have a hard time getting out. So this report corroborates my own personal sense already, and I didn't find the applicant's claim, even with an uninformed assessment, didn't make sense to me. So I find this persuasive. So it sounds like the other claims were fairly modest, and I didn't see anything else of particular note on the other claims. The issue about the trade-offs, and we're going to have to talk about this probably a number of times, but trading off positives against the visible negative consequences is a very, very tough proposition. And in our research project, which is assessing the economic and social impacts, all of them, good and bad, of expanded gaming on Massachusetts, our researchers say, don't try to quantify the social aspects and put a dollar value on it to weigh it off against the hard economic assets. And so will Bolton benefit from people having jobs? I would say probably yes. You know, will they benefit by having some marginal impact on the property values because more people are going into their unused properties? Maybe. But I don't see that. You know, I think you'd have to have a pretty modest negative effect to have it be offset. But we are directed that we may consider that, so I think we need to at least refer to it. But for my money, so to speak, that's a pretty tough trade-off. If there are measurable adverse consequences, I think communities have the right to have those dealt with pretty much on their face, independent of the likely positives that will come from this whole thing. It's just sort of, in general, how I feel about it. And apropos of this particular case, I certainly don't think that whatever these potential benefits are, that they offset what, to me, is a pretty clear traffic problem.
I would agree in this case with that analysis, although the broader offset issue, it seems to me, is one that we could talk about when the appropriate case arises. I agree that in this case, the positives don't offset the negative traffic impact.
Okay. Oh, so are we done on this? Does somebody want to present a motion on whether or not?
Well, the only other a factor that you mentioned is the construction traffic, which the report also mentions that there are ways to fairly reasonably mitigate that impact with scheduling times and et cetera.
Correct.
And the applicant can even tell them which roads you got to use.
Absolutely.
You can't use such and such roads.
Or-
That was a general point throughout all of these
Yes.
that our consultants made, that the development, the construction traffic tended to be, A, not that big a deal on its face, and B, something that could be managed. B would tend to use the bigger roads anyway, and C could be managed by the applicant.
Right.
I agree with you.
Right.
So I'd move that in light of the traffic impact revealed by the application and confirmed by the commission's consultants, Bolton be designated as surrounding community.
Second. Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? This motion to make Bolton a surrounding community is carried unanimously.
Thank you, Commissioners. If you can move to Fitchburg, page 3 of the Fitchburg presentation.
Yep.
Although Fitchburg and Leominster share a border, Fitchburg and the proposed gaming facility are not as proximate. As noted in the Fitchburg petition, the distance to the gaming establishment is less than 10 miles. The proponent notes that the project is located approximately 6.5 miles from the nearest city neighborhood and notes that the driving time to Fitchburg's downtown, 18 minutes, is approximately the same time it takes to drive from the location of the project to the city of Worcester, which clearly is not in proximity to the project. I mentioned the same, I won't go through this each time, but I mentioned the same amendments that were offered by the legislature as a guide, 235. Infrastructure, page 8 of your packets. The city of Fitchburg argues that not an insignificant amount of 7,800 projected vehicle trips per day will travel through the city. It also notes that the primary access route to the slot parlor, including residents of New Hampshire, are stated to be Route 2 and Route 12, which traverse the city. The city notes that Route 12 is a heavily congested roadway with approximately 22,000 vehicles per day. Near Leominster, approximately 30,000 vehicles per day on Route 12 near Route 2. The applicant argues that the market study and traffic studies show there will be almost no measurable traffic impacts on the city's primary thoroughfares, Route 12 and Route 31. The applicant notes that the project will add only 2 p.m. peak hour vehicle trips to Route 12 and 8 p.m. peak hour vehicle trips to Route 31. These 2 p.m. peak hours and 8 p.m. peak hour projections compared to the theoretical 2,800 vehicle per hour capacity of a two-lane, two-way highway. The applicant also states that the project traffic will not result in any change in operation level of service at any intersection in the city. Other analyses conducted on this project impact do not state that Fitchburg traffic infrastructure will be significantly and adversely impacted. For example, according to the minutes of the August 27, 2000 meeting of the Montezut Regional Planning Council, although significant concerns were raised about traffic on Route 117 in Lancaster and Bolton, and the MRPC analysis recommends the study of those intersections, no intersections in Fitchburg were recommended for study. The MRPC did note likely increases in traffic from Route 12 to the north to New Hampshire, and noted that impacts on Route 2 within a 45-minute drive time should be addressed. The City of Leominster peer review of the proponent's traffic plan indicated no significant impact on Fitchburg's transportation infrastructure. Green International noted that the Stantec traffic study examined locations only within Leominster. The information provided in the study or other sources within the application does not provide a substantial amount of information relative to the potential traffic impact on Fitchburg. In the comment letter, on the Mass DOT comment letter, the DOT has not mentioned any potential concern relative to the state highways in the city of Fitchburg, nor called for the applicant to include any in subsequent environmental studies. One possible reason is that Route 12 in Fitchburg is not under Mass DOT jurisdiction. Route 12 is the primary route through Fitchburg that would be used to access the Leominster site. It is primarily a two-lane highway. Based on general observations and knowledge of the corridor, it operates with constraints between Route 2 and the downtown area during weekday peak periods, as well as during the portions of Saturday. A section of the roadway near Route 2 and inter Fitchburg has undergone recent improvements by Mass DOT. However, it remains a two-lane arterial for the most part, as right-of-way constraints exist and the acquisition of the city was not accomplished. The Route 2, Route 12 interchange remains a concern in the region. Route 12 connects with Route 31 in the center of Fitchburg, which Route 31 continues north and provides connections to communities in southern New Hampshire. As a result of remaining a two-lane arterial with a number of access drives and intersecting ways, current congestion uses will remain in the future regardless of the proposed casino. The proposed casino site is situated approximately 9 miles to downtown Fitchburg. There is no direct route connection between the city and the casino site. However, Route 31 to Route 12 runs into Leominster and then connects with Route 117 in downtown Leominster. In any event, while Fitchburg is proximate to Leominster, the city's level of direct connectivity in relation to traffic and access to the casino should be considered low. Under existing conditions, the congestion and motorist delays are experienced. If one presumes 5% of the casino traffic would travel along Route 12, this would amount to approximately 25 trips during the PM peak hour and approximately 40 vehicle trips during the Friday, Saturday peak hours of the casino. Those locations that currently experience long delays will continue to do so with the project. However, at these levels of added traffic, there will not be a noticeable change in congestion and delays. While we believe there is a reasonable possibility that more casino-related traffic would be oriented to the west and north, including Fitchburg Route 12, than was predicted by Stantec, the likelihood of a negative change in level of service, even if the estimated traffic was doubled, would be small. Based on the noted 5% estimate on Route 12, one could assume from the Stantec study it would result in approximately 25 vehicle trips during the PM peak hour and approximately 40 during the casino peak periods Friday and Saturday evenings. Compared to the current Route 12 volumes, the increase in traffic on Route 12 is expected to be approximately 1 to 2% during the PM peak hour. This would typically be considered a small impact. Significant peak vehicle generation on state and federal highways. The two state highways, but under city jurisdiction that pass through Fitchburg would be 12 and 31. Based on the applicant's traffic projections, as well as the potential higher level of additional traffic volumes discussed above, the proposed casino would not result in a significant peak generation on the state highway located in the city of Fitchburg. While there will undoubtedly be some casino-related traffic originated from Fitchburg, as well as passing through the city, it is not evident, based on the combined information that has been presented, reviewed and evaluated, that the facility would likely cause a significant and adverse impact on the roadways. The surrounding community determination will need to be based on other factors, including geographic proximity to the site and host community or operational concerns other than traffic. Turn to page 37 for development. Fitchburg states that the potential of increased traffic congestion associated with the 2-year construction phase of the project is inevitable, and that the applicant has not shared the construction mitigation plan with the city. The applicant argues that Fitchburg cannot demonstrate that noise or environmental issues will have a significant adverse impact on the city, given the distance between the project and the city. Applicant states that it will direct its construction team to avoid local roads and to utilize the major highways for all construction traffic. The ENF requires the applicant to include a construction discussion in the draft environmental impact in order to minimize impacts. Green International, hold on, let me just make sure I have the correct quote. I'll just paraphrase. Green International said that the applicant has stated the construction-related heavy would be controlled and would remain in the area's major roadways. And then it believes that the impact on Route 12 and 31 would be minimal. Fitchburg operations. Fitchburg and this is on page 42. Fitchburg anticipates an increased demand for housing due to the affordable nature of its existing housing stock and notes that further inspections and timely enforcement of housing units will strain city resources. Fitchburg notes that this expert studies indicate that a greater proportion of problem gamblers come from lower socioeconomic strata, and the incidence of addictive gambling is greater within the 10-mile radius of a gambling facility. As the city is within such 10-mile radius and has a significant population that is in the lower end of the socioeconomic strata, it states that social services provided by the city will be strained beyond capacity. Fitchburg also notes that it is likely to experience a significant increase in mutual aid requests from Leominster for fire and EMT services. The applicant responds that there is significant vacant housing stock in Leominster and that the city of Leominster's peer review indicated that the applicant's commitment to local hiring should have no adverse impact on the local housing stock throughout the region. The applicant states that the project will not create any significant need for new housing in the city in response to the concern about additional inspection personnel. Further, Leominster police and fire departments issued letters stating that they do not expect any mutual aid assistance from the city. Further, it notes that Leominster will build a police substation in the facility in addition to state police presence and the gaming commission presence. Finally, in regard to the concern about problem gamblers, the applicant argues that significant expenditures in excess of $15 million per year will be utilized to address problem gambling. The MRPC, the Montechusett Regional Planning Commission, noted that there's significant distressed properties and foreclosed properties in Fitchburg, and that the host community and surrounding communities should use this new job-generating facility as an opportunity to connect employees with available homes, reversing disinvestment and stimulating reinvestment in neighborhoods throughout the Montechusett region, thus stabilizing neighborhoods. Mr. Van der Linden commented on the existing research related to connections on problem gambling. He noted that problem gambling rates and proximity to gaming availability. He said that there is many studies have found a relationship between proximity to gambling venues and the prevalence of problem gambling. In 1998, analysis of U.S. gambling impact and behavior study data found that location of a casino within 50 miles was associated with approximately double the rate of pathological gambling. He noted that there is a small body of research that explores whether gambling acts as a form of regressive taxation, where poorer people contribute disproportionately more to gambling revenue than people with higher incomes. Although it is clear that lower income people contribute proportionally more of their income to gambling than do middle and high income groups, it is important to recognize that most of these studies' average annual expenditure on gambling still tends to increase as a function of income class. He notes that it seems logical to conclude that the increase in persons with gambling disorders would create a burden on the city's social service agencies. However, as pointed out by Dr. Williams, one of the persons studied, the bulk of the impacts tend to be social, non-monetary in nature because only a minority of the problem gamblers seek or receive treatment, and only a minority typically have police, child welfare, employment involvement. That being said, it is difficult to accurately predict the actual impact, as ultimately it will vary between jurisdictions depending on the type of gambling introduced and the magnitude of this change. For example, a new casino in a small community with limited prior exposure to gambling has a much larger impact than if a casino was introduced in a large city that already has easy access to gambling operations to a range of gambling operations. In referencing a report by Dr. Robert Williams, I think also referenced in the Fitchburg application, he concluded that an overall impact of gambling in a particular jurisdiction in a specific time period ranges from small to large and from strongly positive to strongly negative. That being said, in most jurisdictions, in most time periods, the impacts of gambling are mixed, with a range of mildly positive economic impacts offset by a range of mild to moderate negative social impacts. The question, to what extent will the introduction of gaming facility create negative impacts in Fitchburg, is difficult to answer. However, the Commission is currently working closely with Sigma, UMass Amherst to conduct a controlled before and after comparison of changes in rates of problem gambling and related indices coincident with the introduction of gaming facility. The ongoing findings of this study will provide the most accurate determination of what the true social and economic impacts of the host surrounding communities. A more precise understanding of the impacts will inform the best use of public health trust fund, which was created to assist social service agencies and public health programs to mitigate the potential addictive nature in gambling. We also commissioned a specific study on Fitchburg's housing stock. Nancy can answer any questions if you have any from Pink & Co. Lynn D. Sweet Consulting Group noted that we find that it cannot be determined from the submitted materials and from our independent evaluation that the city of Fitchburg will be significantly and adversely affected by the operation of the gaming establishment after its opening due to housing impacts resulting from the city. In fact, the additional jobs should add to the employment base of Fitchburg and may also address issues of a declining population and vacancy. Based on the unemployment rates, the housing vacant rates, and the skill level of most jobs for that the slots parlor will create, it is safe to conclude that very few of the 500 to 700 new jobs will be filled by personnel moving to the area. In fact, most jobs will be filled by persons who live in the area and therefore already have housing. Therefore, given the likelihood that the majority of workers will be from the immediate area and the city appears to be keeping up with inspecting general housing stock, we conclude the city of Fitchburg will not be significantly adversely impacted by the operation of a gaming establishment after the opening due to housing impacts from the facility. If the commission's turn to page 69 under other, there's nothing. And then if the commission then turns to page 84, we just discussed the positive impacts for the city, for the town of Bolton, and there are similar positive impacts related to the city of Fitchburg, but I note that earlier in my testimony, the applicant said that there'd be positive impacts on housing in the region as a result of their facility and employment. We're ready for any questions.
Questions?
A lot of words, I'm sorry.
No, very helpful,
Yeah.
very helpful. We hit the highlights.
Anybody?
I have no questions.
Good questions.
I thought in the housing report, Nancy, I don't think that it necessarily changes the bottom line, but the report says, the current number of units just completed and in development in the city, it appears that the City Inspectional Services Department does have the capacity to monitor housing conditions in its general housing stock. And goes on to say, city appears to be keeping up with inspecting the general housing stock. Where did that conclusion come from?
I think it's a general statement, and they also did a little bit of research to compare what other municipalities have in the way of housing inspection staff. But it's not a lot of data that's included in your report.
There's a lot of data about
Right.
vacant units and so forth. And I think the conclusion that this is not likely to have any negative effect at all. If anything, it might have a positive effect, probably makes sense. But I don't understand that conclusion. I hate to have an assertion that maybe is not very relevant, but also maybe is wrong. It doesn't make our report look very good. And I don't know whether they're keeping up with the inspections or not. It's sort of not the point, but it's an assertion in here which maybe we could at least confirm where that comes from. If it's accurate, clarify why. If it isn't, take it out, because if it's wrong, I hate to have it on the record, in the record.
We could perhaps clarify that via email while
Okay,
we're discussing it.
all right, great. Others? Anybody else?
We're ready to discuss each of the factors, I
Yeah,
suppose?
that's what we're talking about, yeah.
Well, I did want to just mention on the topic of housing, which is just what you were talking about. This is perhaps one of the examples of positive impact. If people were to move to vacant units, foreclosed units, and of course there's work to be done at the local level. Those additional tenants really represent a positive impact.
Or owners, yeah.
Tenants or owners. So there's a case to be made that that's a virtuous circle in theory, or one that could stop a vicious circle of foreclosure and vacancies.
I would say that's precisely one of the consequences that the legislature was looking for.
That's right.
That's the positive side of economic development. And at a certain point, it could be onerous, and but it's clearly that there's
With the
not,
stock.
at the maximum impact, it's very, very slight. But whatever it is, it would have a net positive. I agree with you.
Not only that, you know, the number of jobs and some of the promises about local hiring may actually have no additional impacts because some of those employees actually are already, in theory, living in the area. So I agree with all of that.
There was a, Mr. Scully, in your transportation report, it says that the applicant's trip projections from west and north may be low. You go on to say that even if they're low by a factor of 2, that they're not enough to have any negative impact. But you also say that this process, that whether the trip counts are right or not, trip projections are right or not, ought to be reviewed in the MEPA process. Do you know where I'm talking about? It's page 5 of your Fitchburg analysis. The middle of the second bullet point, second paragraph.
Okay, I see it.
The reference? I just wonder what would be the consequence of that? If MEPA sees that the trip count is low, what's the consequence of that?
Well, it likens to my statement of even if traffic was doubled. For example, what we've seen to date is the applicant projecting about 10% of the casino-related traffic heading sort of to the west along Route 2, to the north, beyond the Fitchburg boundary, a total of 10%, which, looking at all the information that we've scanned through, and granted, we didn't have a lot of the detail that the applicant is basing his analysis on, it just appeared potentially that it could be a lot.
It could be low, I
A
understand.
fair amount
But
more.
you
So all I'm saying is that, as MEPA is going through their process, and I believe in some of the DOT comments as well as maybe the Secretary's direction to provide more supporting information and detail on their travel forecasting. So in short, the consequence would be, let's say it's not 10%, let's say it's 20%, and you saw the concerns by the MRPC of looking at some of our interchanges along Route 2, east and west, within 45 minutes. I think that's some of the points where the applicant, as they go into the MEPA process, would be providing more analysis of areas of concern.
But you said even if they're doubled, even if they're wrong by half, that it wouldn't.
With respect to...
It wouldn't affect those kinds of interchanges to the extent that would need remediation.
Correct. Some of them are going to, like Route 12 and Route 2, interchange needs and has been being looked at by DOT for several years. With respect to specifically Fitchburg and the Route 12 corridor, even if the traffic was double what is currently projected, in my opinion, it would still amount to a small impact on Route 12. And the difference in Fitchburg compared to Bolton is that while Route 12 is a major arterial providing access into Fitchburg, if I was coming down from New Hampshire and using Route 31, I don't have to get on Route 12 if I don't want to. I can use 2 or 3 other ways to get to the area where I want to be in terms of the casino. So that, and it was recently improved. Route 12 went through a major improvement by DOT. They determined that it wasn't going to be widened, even though volumes might suggest it should be widened, but that decision was made because of right-of-way constraints and lack of being able to or want to acquire property. So there's a lot of different factors in our opinion. That said, even if the numbers were double on that Route 12, the relative increase is going to be small. The relative changes at operating conditions, small.
But if review under the MEPA process leads to a conclusion that some of these numbers are off, it is conceivable that the permit granting authorities could impose conditions, remediation conditions on
Correct.
the grant
That's
of a
correct.
permit, right?
And I'll add to that in that the Route 12 and locations in Fitchburg have not been asked to be studied in the MEPA process, either by DOT or the MRPC. MRPC very general, but those comments never got to MEPA. And the city of Fitchburg, I did not find any reference that they had communicated their concerns to MEPA. So, yes, as part of MEPA, if a problem occurred and they did look at the Route 12, Route 2 interchange, and it needed some things and they could do it, Mass DOT may require them to do something.
Yeah, and thank you, Commissioner, because that's why I wanted to focus on this, because Mayor Wong of Fitchburg has written us a impassioned, rational letter saying that she really is concerned about the issues. I think your analysis is persuasive, and I think the point that your judgment is, even if it's doubled, it still is negligible in terms of its adverse impacts. But it's also important that there is another bite at the apple, should the city choose to pursue it appropriately, which it should have done a while back.
And again, if experience proves that there are unanticipated consequences, access to the Community Mitigation Fund is available.
Correct. Good point. Thank you. There's a third bite at the apple.
Could I mention something about the problem gambling topic? I think it's maybe obvious to a couple of us, but I think it's important for the record to underscore what you mentioned. We are spending quite a bit of money on a baseline study as we speak to try to determine what's the level of impact currently on the state, on the region, the environs. Our public health trust fund is projected to be perhaps close to 30% of what is spent nationally in the United States currently for addressing problem gambling. So I think it's very important to remember that we are covering this. The legislature gave us the tools, very important and powerful tools to study it first and then address it. Even though proximity may be a factor, I think it's important to look at it where we're looking at it from, which is at the state level and with the appropriate prior research, rather than assigning it to a surrounding community discussion.
Yeah, that's a really important point. Thank you. And also, not only are we doing a statewide study, but we will also have a sample of the immediate region, the most heavily impacted regions. So if, for example, if Leominster were selected to be the licensee, we'll have a sample of the immediate impact of primary feeder systems. So we're gonna know more about what's happening than any community could possibly find out on their own, A, and B, we're gonna have more resources to deal with it than any community could possibly have. So it's a very important point that this is one that the legislature got right and we will address. All right, do we have a motion? Or
I was just going to say, you know,
Okay.
in reviewing the information we've gotten from the city of Fitchburg, you know, it just raised kind of the ironic question of designating a community as a surrounding community based on what I see as more of the positives. You have a community with a high unemployment rate, looking for jobs. You know, it's nice to have a mix of jobs in the region, be they full-time or part-time. You know, the question of, you know, a strain on inspectional services. Most of inspectional services revenues are all driven by fee-based inspections. It's not driven by a general appropriation from the community. I'm not sure if that's how Fitchburg operates, but you know, I only saw the positives, even though it seemed that those things seemed to be a negative that would warrant the surrounding community designation. But you know, hopefully would stress that our applicant in the city could work something out that would focus on any type of agreement having a positive impact and being strategic about that.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I'm persuaded that we, between the RPAs and experts that we've hired, that we've looked at all of the potential impacts in the petition, and they do not rise to the level of designating as a surrounding community.
Want to so move?
I move that we do not designate Fitchburg as a surrounding community.
Second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor of denying the application for as surrounding community status by the community of Fitchburg signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it unanimously.
One thing I wanted to mention, Commissioners, is at the last meeting, the applicant did note that they had an agreement that they had offered to nearby communities, and that they would keep that agreement on the table. I'm not saying that that's connected to your analysis that you just completed, but I will note that for the record, in addition to the potential for the
Right.
Community Mitigation Fund and some of the other things that
Thank
you
you.
did mention.
That was gracious of them, and I appreciate you reminding us.
And I think since they included that assertion, that would likely be part of our application process by which they're held.
Right.
Let's move on to Sterling. If you look to page 3 of the packet. Sterling and Leominster share a border. Both the applicant and the community agree that the proposed facility is within 1/4 of a mile of the Sterling border. The applicant argues that Sterling is not in proximity to the project because Jungle Road, the site of the project, is on a dead-end road that does not extend into Sterling, that the center of Sterling is approximately 5.5 miles from the project, and that the likely driving route between the project and the town would be Jungle Road to I-190. The applicant and Sterling disagree about the likelihood of future extensions of Jungle Road to other Sterling roads. Sterling notes that there are a number of full-service restaurants located within 1 mile from the slot parlor site. We referenced the 235 issue previously. 1/4 of a mile would be well within such standard offered by the legislature's amendments. Infrastructure, page 9. The town of Sterling argues that town roadways directly servicing or impacted by the proposed slots parlor include Route 12, Route 62, Choxet Road, and Pratt's Junction Road, and that I-190 runs through Sterling for approximately 6 miles, and it is one of the major feeder roads to the slots partner. The town argues that PPE's own data from its traffic consultant Stantec acknowledges that there will be increased traffic on I-190, Route 12, and Route 62 as a direct result of vehicles going and coming from the slots parlor. There are already several areas of special traffic concern: the on-off ramps at Route 12 and the I-190 interchange, the intersection of Route 12 and Choxet Road, the intersection of Choxet Road and Pratt's Junction Road, and Route 62 from the Clinton town line to Route 12 in Sterling, which will be a major route from Clinton to the site. And these concerns will be heightened as a result of traffic flowing to and from the slots parlor. It is reasonable and logical to conclude, and common sense dictates, that an increase in traffic will lead to an increase in traffic will lead to an increase in traffic accidents and in motor vehicle law violations. One may also reasonably assume that the slots parlor will generate more day tour bus traffic to and from the slots parlor, which would heighten the likelihood of a significant motor vehicle accident involving multiple casualties. The applicant notes that the project will add only 2 p.m. peak hour vehicle trips to Route 62 and 1 p.m. peak hour vehicle trip to Route 12. These 2 peak hour and 1 peak hour vehicle trip projections compare to the theoretical 2,800 vehicle per hour capacity of a two-way highway. Similarly, the applicant also states that projected traffic will not result in any change in operational level of service at any intersection. Similar to what was reported in the past, the August 27, 2013 meeting of the MRPC, according to its minutes, concerns were raised regarding Route 17 in Lancaster and Bolton. MRPC analysis recommends a study of those intersections. No intersections in Sterling were recommended for study. The City of Leominster's peer review of the applicant's traffic plan indicated no significant impact on Sterling's transportation infrastructure. No Sterling intersections were included in the ENF certificate on the list to be studied by the applicant. Green International noted the proposed casino is located on Jungle Road that is close proximity to Route 17 and I-190, all in Leominster. While there's no direct connection between the proposed casino location and the town of Sterling, traffic from Sterling could access the proposed casino route via Route 12, Willard Street, and Route 117. Traveling along this route, the project site is approximately 2.4 miles from the Leominster-Sterling town line and approximately 5.5 miles from the center of Sterling. Vehicles could also use the residential roadway of Old Mill Road to travel between Willard Street and Jungle Road to access the site. However, it's more likely that any traffic originating from the Sterling would access the casino site using I-190 either from Route 12 or Route 490 interchanges rather than continuing on local roads from Sterling and into Leominster. While the Stantec report did not specifically address traffic originating from or traveling through Sterling, it assumed that 1% of the site traffic would travel along Old Mill Road, but noted that this was conservatively high estimate. The proposed casino site is situated approximately 5.5 miles from Sterling. There's no direct route from Sterling to the proposed casino site, not including I-190 that is a major regional highway passing through the town. There was no analysis for Route 12 in Sterling by the applicant. Based on the trip distribution presented by the applicant, approximately 5 vehicle trips during the PM peak hour and 8 hour during the Saturday peak hour of the casino would use local roads within the town of Sterling. This level of additional vehicle trips is not expected to result in any noticeable change in traffic operations. I'll skip ahead to significant peak vehicle generation on state and federal highways. Based on the applicant's market analysis and traffic study, 20 to 22.5% of all traffic is expected to use I-190 to and from the south of the project site, and as a result would travel through the town of Sterling on I-190. While this amount could be considered significant, I-190 is a major regional highway, and the vast majority of this traffic will stay on I-190 and pass through the town. Green also reviewed the historical crash data on I-190 in the town of Sterling. The data reviewed were the 3 latest years contained in the Mass DOT records. Based on the current crash rate in the segment of I-190, the additional traffic could be expected to result in an additional 0.79 crashes per year, i.e. less than 1 additional crash per year. While we are sensitive to the fact that all crashes are important, if 1 additional crash per year occurs in this section due to the proposed casino, it would not significantly change the overall crash rate, and the average crash rate would remain low, below the statewide average for this type of highway. If you turn to page 37. Development. Sterling has not indicated that its construction is a concern in its petition. The applicant argues that Sterling cannot demonstrate noise or environmental issues will have a significant or adverse impact. Green International found that the applicant has stated the construction-related heavy traffic would be controlled and remain on the area's major roadways. I-190 would provide the major route of access for transporting materials to the site. These vehicle trips are not expected to use Route 12 along the southern end of Leominster into Sterling. However, it is fairly early in the process to know definitively regarding the sources of materials. In addition, construction traffic, including the facility that materials are procured from, would be controlled to agree by the applicant. Thus, the direct impact of construction traffic along routes in Sterling can be minimized. If you move forward to operation, page 41. The town of Sterling argues that there are societal and public safety impacts associated with the proposed slot parlor, including potential for increased larcenies and other crimes in Sterling. The slots parlor proposal includes locating a police substation within the facility and surveillance cameras both inside and outside. While this will certainly have a positive impact on reducing crime at the site, it will have the inevitable and foreseeable consequence of pushing criminal activity to other locations away from the police presence and cameras, which means into Sterling, less than a quarter mile away. A potential for increased gambling addiction, which could strain the social service infrastructure of Sterling. If employment opportunities at the Leominster Slots Parlor lead to more people choosing to reside in the neighboring town of Sterling, there will be an increased number of students entering the Sterling school system, which will lead to further economic pressures on Sterling's budget. Sterling is also concerned for the reduction of property values that will result to homes in the vicinity and the proposed slots parlor, not only out of concern for the owners of those properties, but also for the diminution of property taxes that will result. The applicant responded that increased crime and increased gambling addiction are pure speculation that have no basis in fact, and that the facility will benefit from an on-site police station and state police presence, and that the average demographic of a casino customer is 55 years of age or older, and that there's no proximate physical connection between the project site and the town. The applicant asserts no causal relationship between the opening of a gaming facility and property values, and noted that most of the jobs are to be filled by Leominster and area residents, and that there is a significant housing stock in Leominster. Would it be fair to characterize your results, Mr. Van der Linden, for Sterling as similar or very similar to the ones that you raised in Fitchburg?
Yeah, yes.
Is there any significant differences?
The only, not that I could tell, and with, as with Fitchburg, as with Sterling, as with other communities, I think it's important to understand that it's all contextual, and that while I point to a lot of evidence that would lead in one direction or the other, that the community itself, what is the current availability of gambling, what are the community demographic characteristics, are really important to consider. And I think that, as you pointed out, Mr. Chairman, that we are, or I'm sorry, Mr. Commissioner Zuniga, that we are spending a lot of money to try to understand this at a very local level. And so that we can sort of differentiate and sort out this context to really get a good determination of it.
Yeah, it's a good point, because the study is not just on problem gambling. The study is everything. So it's domestic violence, property values, job starts, demand on public services, crime, right. So, and again, we'll be doing this at a level of detail that will inform subsequent conversations and can inform the Community Mitigation Fund, which is there to deal with unanticipated problems. So that's a good point, that there are, it's more than just problem gambling.
So I will not go into the Lindy Sweet Consulting Group had similar results for the housing study related to Sterling. And then lastly, Sterling indicated a concern regarding its water supply and increased demand on water source system. We asked for a study by City Point Partners that indicated that both Sterling statements on water use and sewer use are unsupported allegations. Leominster's water supply has adequate capacity to serve future needs, and the Leominster's sewer systems have capacity. On number 5, other, there is nothing to report. And number 6, positive impacts. These are the similar impacts as the ones that I've previously mentioned. We're ready for any questions you may have.
Commissioners?
I will only, highlight something that they petition here that is also resulting in our ability to address it in the future if it presents itself by virtue of the Community Mitigation Fund. I believe they're concerned that additional access where currently none exists would be a concern. And if that manifests itself, clearly a very important tool would be that Community Mitigation Fund that they could apply to.
I'd just note that the concern about problems arising from the fact that there are 12 restaurants, I think was the number, 12 restaurants or other business establishments that might be populated by, might be attended by people who were going to or from the gaming establishment is another example of something the legislation was designed to encourage. It's a positive benefit and one that we've strongly encouraged as well through the urging that cross-marketing agreements and the like be undertaken. So that really falls not in the negative category, but in the positive.
Yeah, I agree. I think the point about our our research project, I hadn't really thought about this before, but our research project will be doing very, very careful analysis of all of the impacts and all of the things that any community, including a hoped-for surrounding community that we're dealing with now, will have real data, hard, finite data on the impacts. And we will use that. If we were wrong in some of our judgments here, if there are impacts, we will use that data that the legislature is having us collect to inform our use of the Community Mitigation Fund. I think it's worth putting that in our opinions. I think that should be of some reassurance. You know, if we miss one here, we will have really good data to demonstrate that, and that will help us figure out where to spend our community mitigation money. This is just for the record, Mr. Scully, but in your concluding opinion on Sterling, as I think in others, you say it is not evident based on the information that has been reviewed and evaluated that the facility would cause a significant adverse effect. I assume that you have had enough information to evaluate and review to feel confident in your judgments.
Yes.
Okay. Do I have a motion on the issue of surrounding community status for Sterling?
I'd move that the petition of Sterling to be designated as surrounding community be denied.
Second? Second. Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion to deny the petition for surrounding community status for Sterling, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have unanimously.
So, okay, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to go to Dayton first and then take Bridgewater to finish. Dayton, if you look at page 3 of the Dayton proposals, no information regarding Dayton's proximity to the Raynham facility and to Raynham was provided by Dayton or the applicant. According to Google Maps, the distance between the Raynham facility and Dayton is 12.7 miles with a commuting time of 27 minutes traveling along Route 138 or 16.9 miles and 25 minutes traveling on Route 24. This compares to the 235 that I mentioned earlier. If you go to page 7, traffic infrastructure, Dayton's petition did not mention traffic as a concern. The town of Dayton's petition to be designated as a surrounding community stated that the town requests that its possible designation in relation to the Raynham Slots Parley remain undecided until the parlor's actual impact on this town can be accurately assayed when the slot parley actually commences operations. The accompanying letter from the chief of the town of Dayton Fire Department stated, "I see no impact on the town of Dayton with any of these establishments other than a possible call for mutual aid to surrounding town." The applicant opposes the petition because the community is not likely to experience impacts from the development or operation of the Raynham Park gaming establishment. The applicant's nearby impact report compiled by Nish Engineering, which concluded that a number of geographically closer communities were not significantly and adversely impacted, did not study Dayton's impacts. The commission contracted with Southeast Regional Economic Development District, SERPID, and the Old Colony Planning Council to study potential impacts of the facility on nearby communities. SERPID concluded that SERPID's analysis was not detailed enough to find a measurable deterioration or level of service at locations in other communities in the SERPID region, including Dayton, attributable to the Raynham facility. Dayton was not addressed in the project's E&F certificate. In sum, the analysis by Green, increased traffic volumes on local streets, as noted above, the casino-related traffic in Dayton is 60 vehicle trips per day based on the SERPID travel model. If all were to be on Route 44, this would result in an increase of approximately 0.5% that would be considered minimal. While there's limited potential for casino-related traffic to travel through the local roadways in the town of Dayton, it is not evident based on the information that has been reviewed and evaluated that the facility would likely cause a significant and adverse traffic impact on the subject roadways. The surrounding community determination will need to be based on other factors, including geographic proximity to the site, host community, and operational concerns. If you move to the operational on page 33, Dayton did not reference specific operational concerns, other than the potential that any facilities might have mutual aid requests. I note the previous analyses that I just mentioned, but also included in your response is an analysis that was conducted regarding the Rainham related housing facilities. And the Rainham related housing facilities analysis concluded a very similar result to the result that was included in the Fitchburg, Sterling, and Bolton materials in relation to the availability of housing in Rainham, and the likelihood that that this would have no significant impact upon the housing stock. In the other, there's no other, and then regarding the positive impacts, the applicant's application includes a description of many positive impacts of the proposed facility, including approximately annual tax revenue of $137,800,000 to the state. The economic impact of the facility statewide will be the creation of nearly 1,800 total job opportunities, providing nearly $73 million in annual employee earnings, and approximately 800 persons employed from the area at the facility. Further, it projects to purchase $38 million annually in regional goods and services. In addition, regional businesses will realize between $159 and $192 million per year in revenues. Welcome. Any questions?
This is really just a placeholder application in the last analysis, isn't it? They're not, they're requesting that we wait.
Right.
And that's really what the Community Mitigation Fund is all about.
Exactly. I mean, read this, most of the petitioner's claim includes this quote: "Its possible designation in relation to a Rainham slot parlor remain undecided until the parlor's actual impact on the town can be accurately assayed." And that's what it says in each case, and I appreciate the point, but Commissioner McHugh, I totally agree, said it right. That is exactly what the Community Mitigation Fund is for. Anything else? Comments?
So I'd move that the petition of Dayton to be designated as a surrounding community be denied.
Second.
All in favor of the motion to deny the petition of Dayton to be a surrounding community, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? The ayes have unanimously. I'm going to suggest a quick break, and then we'll come back to Bridgewater. Okay, I think we are ready to reconvene.
Yep.
For our fifth surrounding community, we're reconvening at about 11 o'clock.
And then we'll just do those quickly, and then we'll finish Bridgewater.
Mr. Ziemba, ready to pick up?
Great. Council Blue and I were just discussing potentially, before we get to the last one, maybe it might make sense to deal with the Fitchburg involuntary disbursements petition,
Okay.
which accompanied the Fitchburg surrounding community petition. One of the standards for, in our regulations for an involuntary disbursement is that the community will likely be designated as a surrounding community. Now that we have the status, and we know the status that they have not been designated as a surrounding community, that impacts the involuntary disbursements standard.
So I'd move, although I thought we did this last week, I'd move that the petition, the Fitchburg petition for involuntary disbursements be denied.
Second.
Any other discussion?
No, I think much of the discussion we had on this very topic really transfers to the same petition, so.
Including the point about the research that'll be done.
That's right.
Apropos of the Community Mitigation Fund.
That's right.
All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it unanimously.
And then Council Blue has something to report regarding impacted live entertainment venues.
So in your commission package, under Section 5C, we had a petition from the South Shore Music Circus to be designated as an impacted live entertainment venue. We received word late last night that the applicant, Rainham, has agreed to designate them as an impacted live entertainment venue. We believe they will assent and that they will work together to create an appropriate agreement. So the commission need not take action on that today, as they've been designated.
Great. Any more like that?
Now on to Bridgewater. You look at page 3 in your Bridgewater packet. Bridgewater, in regard to proximity, Bridgewater states that other than the city of Taunton, Bridgewater and Rainham share a border far greater than any other town. The applicant's nearby communities impact report states that the proposed facility is approximately 1 mile from Bridgewater's town line, 2 miles by road, and approximately 4.2 miles to the municipal center. Google Maps provides an estimated commuting distance of 7.9 miles and 17 minutes between the site of the proposed facility and Bridgewater Town Hall using routes 138, 106, and 28. If you look at infrastructure, page 7, the town of Bridgewater claims that the developer study fails to identify any destination traffic coming from the south or east through Bridgewater. Yet it is self-evident that the applicant's project will generate at least some traffic from the South Coast area. We question the thoroughness of a study that fails to account for any traffic coming from a population of roughly 175,000 year-round residents. Of particular concern to Bridgewater is an intersection at Route 104 and Elm Street East. Additionally, the town indicates a concern that Bridgewater will experience greater strain on its first responders to incidents on routes 24 and 495. Further, Bridgewater notes that 60% of its mutual aid calls are generated from Rainham. In Bridgewater's testimony before the commission, Bridgewater stated an increase in traffic on routes 24 and 495, as the applicant concedes, will generate additional emergency calls for Bridgewater as the first responder. Since 2006, our fire department has responded to almost 500 calls on Route 24 and 495. Since 2006, our police department has responded to over 300 calls to the most westerly part of Route 104. Since 2006, our fire department has responded to almost 100 calls for mutual aid to Rainham, with whom we have a mutual aid agreement. An increase in traffic to and from the applicant's proposed facility will require additional resources from the town of Bridgewater. The applicant states that both its nearby communities impact report and its traffic impact study conclude that Bridgewater is not likely to experience impact from the construction or operation of the Rainham Park gaming establishment. The applicant's nearby communities impact report concludes that use of minor local roadways to access the site is anticipated to be minimal. The commission contracted with the Old Colony Planning Council to conduct an analysis of impacts likely to be experienced by nearby communities. In its analysis, the OCPC stated that the traffic impact study highlights the fact that the proposed project is sandwiched between I-495 and Route 24 and claims that 70% of the trips generated by the proposed project will use those limited access highways. Although a large amount of traffic is expected to utilize I-495 and Route 24, the local road network will still be a viable option for patrons and employees, and therefore should be included in the expanded study area. Specifically, the study area should analyze traffic impacts on a number of different routes that the OCPC names, including Route 104 and Bridgewater. The OCPC also noted that the applicant's nearby communities impact report does not take into account potential public safety impacts that may be experienced by surrounding communities as a result of the project. The responsibility to responding to these traffic-related issues will be addressed by the community in which the issue occurs. The environmental notification form certificate for the project did not include any recommendation to study intersections in Bridgewater. Green International finds that the niche traffic study examined locations essentially along Route 138 in Rainham, north of Route 1 I-495. The information provided in the study or other sources within the application does not provide a substantial amount of information relative to the potential traffic impact on Bridgewater. Mass DOT comments to date have been in relation to the E&F filed by the applicant. In that comment letter, the DOT comments focused on Route 24, Route 106, as well as the applicant's forecast methods. DOT did not mention any potential concern relative to Route 104 in the town of Bridgewater, nor call for the applicant to include any subsequent environmental studies. One possible reason is that Route 104 west of Bridgewater Center is not under Mass DOT jurisdiction within the exception of the area of the Route 24 interchange. In contrast to Mass DOT, both regional planning agencies, Old Colony Planning Council and Southeastern Regional Planning and Economic Development District, SERPID, have commented to MEPA that the applicant's study has not adequately evaluated a broad enough area, including the Route 104 corridor in Bridgewater. Both have called for it to be included in subsequent MEPA analysis. The proposed slots casino in Raynham is to be located off 130 on a site in the former Greyhound Racing site. The site is currently active with simulcast activities, other unrelated activities occurring. Route 138 is a state-owned and maintained roadway in this, and is maintained in this area, two-lane highway. North of the site is Route 106 in Easton. The Route 106 intersection with Route 138 is currently signalized and is planned for some improvements by DOT. Approximately 1.5 miles south of the site is the Route 138 interchange with I-495. Elm Street intersects Route 138 approximately 1.3 miles south of the site, and the intersection is controlled by a traffic signal. The niche study estimates that the proposed casino project will result in a total traffic generation of approximately 7,500 over the course of the day, with the net new number of trips being approximately 5,850. The town of Bridgewater is located to the east of Raynham and is a bordering community. Elm Street, that is located south of the project site on Route 138, provides a connection to Route 104 in Bridgewater. Route 104 is a state-numbered route that passes through Bridgewater and later intersects with Route 106 in East Bridgewater, where that route continues to the east, providing access to communities such as Halifax, Plimpton, and Kingston. Within Bridgewater, Route 104 connects to the town center where it intersects with Route 18 and 28, two routes that provide connections to Middleborough and Lakeville. Route 104, which comes under the jurisdiction west of the town center, intersects with Route 24 as well. Based on data from the OCPC, the Elm Street area east of Route 138 in Raynham carries approximately 4,200 vehicles per day, while Route 104 just west of Route 24 interchange was observed to have a daily volume of approximately 9,800 vehicles. One pattern that has been noted in past studies is that a relatively large movement of motorists travel between I-495 Route 138 interchange and the Elm Street 104 section, avoiding the Route 104 Route 24 interchange to I-495 movement. The niche study, notwithstanding being limited in study area and questions pertaining to trip forecasting, projects approximately 5% of the casino traffic to use Elm Street to and from the east. Our review of the analysis and information provided by the applicant, as well as the information from the regional planning agencies, would suggest that this movement may be between 5 and 8%. Based on these percentages and presuming the niche forecasts are reasonable, correct in terms of total site traffic, results in daily and weekend PM peak hour estimates of added traffic on Elm Street and Route 104 in Bridgewater of approximately 375 to 600 over the day and 55 to 90 during the PM peak hour. Again, the applicant did not provide an analysis of peak Saturday conditions, but based on our assessment, the Saturday peak hour added volumes to Elm Street due to the casino could exceed 100 vehicles. The relative traffic increases in Elm Street east of Route 138 and Route 104 between Elm Street and Route 24 interchange were calculated based on the potential added trips to the streets. This results in an estimated daily increase of between 8 and 14% on the Elm Street section and 4 to 6 increase on the Route 104 section. The weekday peak hour increases would be between 10 and 17% on Elm Street and 6 to 10% on the subject Route 104 section. At these levels, the increases could be noticeable and may result in changes in operating conditions at key locations, particularly on signalized intersections. There is no analysis for this corridor by the applicant, so the current operating levels are not fully known. However, analysis provided OCPC shows that the Route 104 intersection with Elm Street is currently operating poorly, level of service F, while the signals at the Route 24 interchange ramps are operating at level of service D or better. An increase of 90 vehicle trips could potentially alter the levels of service, although the Route 24 ramp intersections would continue operating at acceptable levels, but the motorist delays at the unsignalized intersection of Route 104 with Elm Street could be significantly increased. Again, there is no peak Saturday analysis completed by the applicant. Based on the above, it is estimated that PM peak hour increases at Elm Street range from 10 to 17% during the weekday peak hour, and while Route 104 increases would range from 6 to 10%, daily traffic increases would be generally similar. The levels of service would likely be noticeable and would be considered moderately high. significant peak vehicle on highways and state and federal highways. The state highway that passes through Bridgewater would be a potential concern as 104. This has a significant, the trip generation related to casino trips would be between 50 to 90 vehicle trips. While Saturday peak analysis was not completed, we would estimate site trips potentially added to Route 104 during this time to be greater than 100 vehicle trips. The level of added trips to the two-lane Route 104 highway would likely be noticeable and could be considered significant. As a result of the level of casino-related traffic estimated passing the town of Bridgewater while traveling to the casino, based on the information that has been reviewed and evaluated, based on the above factors considered in the surrounding community evaluation, it is our opinion that there would be a significant and adverse traffic impact. If the commissioners go to page 25, development. Excuse me, page 29. Let me just skip because I misplaced my piece of paper there. On operations, Bill, maybe you could just summarize your development recommendation.
On which subject, John?
On Bridgewater?
Yeah, you just gave the concluding opinion where so related to the development.
Just the construction related.
Oh, construction.
Yep.
I'm sorry. Again, it's very early in the process to know exactly where construction materials and construction vehicles will be routed. However, you have 138 and you're within 1.5 miles of the 495 interchange, so we would expect most of the construction and heavy vehicle trips to be on the main routes and use the regional highway system. And again, similar to the others, once you get into the construction management phase, it's something that is controllable so that you can work with your contractors' scheduling as well as routes. So there should be, again, on long-haul trips, non-local generated construction vehicles, no reason to be traveling along Route 104 with construction-type traffic.
Thank you, Bill. Operations, page 35. Bridgewater's critical concern, and one not contemplated by the Expanded Gaming Act and its regulations, is the potential impact on Bridgewater's shared regional school district. Bridgewater expressed a concern that Raynham, with additional contributions from the applicant, could dissolve the regional school district. Further, higher contributions from Raynham could negatively impact educational opportunities in Bridgewater. Bridgewater also expressed concern that its lower housing costs could lead to greater school enrollment. The applicant provided no response to the concern about regional school budgets. However, in its nearby community's impact report, it states that based on the history of the site, the size of the project, and the size proximity to residential neighborhoods in nearby communities, there will be minimal negative impacts to the housing market in nearby communities. The OCPC states that it seems unlikely that there would be a major housing impact associated with the slot parlor in the surrounding communities. Under the maximum job scenario of 600 new jobs, almost all of the positions consisting both mostly of unskilled and semi-skilled jobs would be able to be filled by applicants within a 30-minute commute to the site without requiring the construction of new housing and new families into the surrounding communities, but that this result cannot be guaranteed. Neither the Commission's internal staff nor outside consultants have determined a method to verify whether Bridgewater's concerns about regional school budgets and participation by Raynham are likely. There is no reference to contributions to school budgets in Raynham's host community agreement. The Lynn Sweet Consulting Group noted that we find it cannot be determined from the submitted materials and our independent evaluation that the communities surrounding Raynham will be significantly and adversely affected by the operation of the gaming establishment after its opening due to the housing impacts resulting from this facility. They also noted Old Colony Planning Council document examined vacant units in a 20-mile radius around the site and concluded that it seems unlikely there would be a major housing impact associated with the slots parlor in the surrounding communities. At page 66, Bridgewater Ether, there's nothing, although perhaps the reference to regional school districts perhaps would be another rather than an operational concern to fit under either. And then positive impacts, I read a statement earlier regarding the job opportunities that will result from the Rainham facility. We're available for any questions.
Questions?
Well, I did want to talk about the regional school district because I do have some background on this myself. And the background goes back to my days at the School Building Authority, where we saw a lot of regional schools dynamics. Maybe a little historical perspective might help the discussion. During the 80s, the Department of Education incentivized a lot of these regional schools to form for many good reasons. They were given strong incentives with the likes of additional transportation money. And when budget constraints at the state level caused some of those incentives to go away, they were later reinstated in other forms. Almost every regional school district started to rethink their region and wanted to split up back to where they were. So this is the tensions that exist with the regional schools is nothing new. Bridgewater's claim here, it occurs to me, is like a spouse that says, I don't want my spouse to make more money because that's going to cause us to divorce. And moreover, Bridgewater has the majority of the school committee seats because they are the majority, they are the larger school district in this case. So I understand the dynamics that go at the local level, but I don't think this even fits in the other category that the Gaming Act contemplated in terms of potential impacts.
So you wouldn't see it as...
I don't see it as an impact. I mean, it's clearly a positive impact for Rainham. They have a larger commercial base where Bridgewater does not, and that has been a source of conflict in this particular region.
Because of their ability to contribute
Because they can contribute tax revenue. This will further be helping Rainham, arguably. Not arguably, it would be helping Rainham. But that, in my view, does not make a Bridgewater a surrounding community that needs to be compensated for that imbalance. So, by the way, something else. If the license were to go to Rainham, to Rainham essentially, the contribution that they get will eventually be factored into the Chapter 70 formula that the state, where the state provides help for education. So there's...
Maybe while you're here, you'd like to explain the Chapter 70 formula?
Yeah, well, no, actually, I think there's about 3 people in the
We'll
state
lose
that
everybody in the room,
I'm not one of them.
including the mayor.
No, but, well, one of the factors is the relative wealth of the community, and that factors into regional school districts, and that often has, tensions in terms of the dynamics that happen locally. But there will be a smoothing factor eventually, I don't know how soon, that will take this additional contribution to Rainham eventually.
I would defer to Commissioner Zuniga on that item. Others? Comments?
No, it does seem to me that the traffic impact on Route 104 and the Elm Street piece at the bottom is significant. And it's logical when one looks at the map. 104 is a logical drain from the center of Bridgewater over to the facility. It already is it's a small road. It's already got a substantial amount of traffic. It's also a logical place for people to get off Route 24 and go across Elm Street to Route 138 and up. So I think that the thoughtful and careful analysis by our independent experts from Green supports the proposition that there will be at least there is the potential for a significant impact on traffic in that southwest corner of Bridgewater as a result of this facility. And period.
What about the other issues? Did you see anything substantive about the construction operations?
I think the construction applies to just about everybody, just like Mr. Scully was outlining. There are many ways to mitigate, construction vehicle traffic in terms of delivery times that could be stipulated to all the vendors, when construction happens. So the concerns that that a couple of these towns raise, I think apply, can be mitigated, in other words, very thoughtfully.
And there's no evidence from the consultant's evaluation that the other factors raised as possible significant impacts. There's just no evidence to say that there is, and that's schools and housing in particular.
Right. Anything else? Mr. Commissioner McHugh, you want to make a motion?
Surely. Given the, I move that the commission designate the town of Bridgewater a surrounding community because of the traffic impacts that the facility is likely to produce with respect to Route 104.
Second.
Any other discussion? All in favor of the motion to make Bridgewater a surrounding community due to the issue of traffic, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it unanimously. Wow.
Thank you, Commissioners and Chairman. I think that's my report.
You had general update. You skipped over. Did we miss anything?
There's a lot of things happening out there.
That's a good general update.
That's good. All right.
Many in here in a few minutes, so I'll defer to that.
All right. Thank you.
This was really, the work that you put in,
Yeah.
and those who helped you over the last week was significant and time-consuming and enormously helpful. I don't see how we could have done it without getting this done.
Anybody who's looking should notice this huge folder of stuff, much of which is original research done in the last 6.5 days. And it was a lot of work. Thank you, John, and everybody else. Okay, item number 5, General Counsel Blue.
I'm going to ask Mr. Grossman to join us.
Okay.
And Mr. Chairman, I would also ask if you want, given the timing, if you want to look at some other sections before we get to items number D on our legal update.
What did you mean, other items?
Well, if you wanted to do numbers,
Like
maybe 6 or 7
6 and
before,
7.
and then,
Yeah, maybe so. We could save some people some time. Yeah.
so we're happy to do 5A and 5B at the moment and get those taken care of, and then
Okay.
if you want to do 6 or 7, we can.
And C is out, so.
C
yeah.
is out.
So let's do A and B, and then we'll come back. The issue of the Sterling Suffolk Downs discussion, we're gonna, I think, probably end up postponing after lunch, so let's get some other things. Okay.
Catherine, do we have a question on another impacted live entertainment venue?
We addressed that. They were designated. We found out late last night they were designated. The second, if you're asking about the Cape Cod,
I'm asking about Hanover.
Hanover has already been addressed, I believe, and they were designated.
Okay.
So Mr. Grossman will speak to the small business impact statement and the notice of public hearing for the licensing regulations.
Good morning. This is 5A and 5B in your packet. In order to move forward with the draft regulations pertaining to gaming employees and gaming vendors, et cetera, there are a number of filings that have to be made. 5A is the notice of the public hearing, which is scheduled for December 13th. It's a fairly standard notice. This will go both in a number of newspapers across the state and be filed with the Secretary of State's office. And then secondly, and that's 5B, is the small business impact statement, which is required under Section 2 of Chapter 38 of the General Laws. It requires that 5 questions essentially be addressed, and they are each addressed in a separate paragraph here. And they all, of course, pertain to the impact that these regulations will have on small businesses. So that's the key consideration here, is just the impact that the regulations will have on small business. And we note, by and large, that this only pertains to the vendor sections of the regs, not necessarily the employee sections. And then of the vendor regs, it only applies, the analysis, that is, to those that would affect small businesses. So the first question, I mean, I don't know if you've had a chance to read it, but the first question essentially asks us to estimate the number of small businesses that will be impacted, which we've done. It then asks to address any enhanced record-keeping or reporting requirements that will be imposed upon small businesses, including any additional financial implications. Then it asks whether essentially prescriptive versus design-based measures would be more appropriate. It asks us to consider whether the proposal duplicates or conflicts with any of our existing regulations, and then against any regulations from other agencies. And then finally, it asked the Commission to consider whether the proposal will help encourage or discourage the formation of new businesses in the Commonwealth. So we've taken a shot at answering each of those. I think the intent of this is just to ensure that the Commission keeps these issues in mind as it moves forward with the promulgations of the regulations. So for that purpose, it's not intended, I don't think, to be a full-blown analysis, but you do have to answer the questions fairly, I believe. So this would get filed along with the notice of public hearing with the Secretary of the Commonwealth's office, becomes a public document for folks to take a look at. So with that, this is a draft of the document. It will have to be filed tomorrow, so I'd welcome any comments or proposed adjustments that anyone may have.
Since you looked at me, I had a couple of quick, you know, we've talked about potential reporting requirements of vendors with respect to diversity, everything else, more an onus on the applicants. Do we need to worry about that potentially in this statement, even though it hasn't been succinctly formulated? Should we mention it? Should we allude to it or stay away from it altogether?
You're meaning potential reporting requirements that
To vendors.
The vendors. Well, the present draft doesn't address any of that. It doesn't require
Okay.
vendors to report anything. There is some question as to whether they will be required to report anything. Clearly, the gaming establishments will have to report to us the level of business activity that they have with the individual vendors. Though in my preliminary conversations with others, it didn't seem clear to me that the vendors themselves would have to be reporting directly to us, aside from filing the application. So that's why there's no mention of that type of reporting in this statement.
The draft regulations that this is covering, that this small business statement is covering, don't make any provision for vendors to file reports, right?
That's right. And I don't see it.
So it could happen later, but there's nothing in these regulations that would have that impact on the vendors.
That's right.
A couple other comments. Where did you come up with the 500 total, 400 licenses for small business?
It's an educated guess, is the best I could describe it. I discussed it with other folks in the office. I didn't just come up with that myself necessarily, but
If you're a small business, you're excited about seeing those numbers, but
that's right.
Potential.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, your guess is as good as mine. I mean, you try to figure out what types of businesses will be doing business with each establishment, and then consider the fact that there'll be some overlap, so it's not like each one will have independent. And then we tried to project what percentage of the overall vendors would be small businesses, 50 or so employees. And with that, it also seemed to me that it would make sense to try to over-project rather than under-project, whereas, we're supposed to take into account what impact these regs would have on small businesses. So if you assume that there'll be a greater number, then you're more sensitive to these issues. So with all that, and based upon, I spoke to Mr. Acosta quickly about this and what his experience was in other states and New Jersey specifically, and we came up with this number. It's not a scientific number by any stretch.
It's all right. The, at a recent meeting, we obviously adopted a definition of small business. Should we mention that anywhere in this small business impact statement?
That would make some sense.
Okay.
We can add that in.
And then I just, on the last paragraph, just had some recommendations, which I can share with you after, just kind of clean up the language a little bit.
Great, thank you. Anything else? So we do need a motion. Commissioner Stebbins?
Sure. Motion to approve the small impact statement as presented with potentially the inclusion of our small business definition and some other slight modifications.
Second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it unanimously. Is that both of yours?
Yes,
That's A and B.
A and B, yes.
So do we, it's 11:30, and I know a lot of people are here for the Suffolk Downs conversation, but I'm afraid the Suffolk Downs conversation is going to take a while. So we have to break in the middle of lunch, and I hate to make people wait, particularly people who are here to speak. But I think we'd be better off to use this next half hour to clear up these other items that are probably short, and come back, and we'll have as short a lunch break as we can. What does that mean?
Some of the speakers aren't here yet.
Oh,
Karen's on the way, so we're gonna start with Rick.
Oh, okay.
Do his update, and then we'll.
okay,
We can.
okay.
As an alternative, we could try to do this and extend our lunch break a little later. I'm just throwing that out there. Do we anticipate it's going to take a long time, I
I
guess?
don't think we have any idea. I mean, there are at least 3 teams of speakers, and then there's for us to talk about it as long as we feel we want to talk about it. And that could be short or it could be long. So I'd hate to break it up with lunch. I think it'd be better to do it all at one time. Okay. Apologies to folks who are waiting.
Chairman Crosby, members of the commission.
You get this mic on?
Try it now.
Try that one. All right.
What I'll do is, we understand that Director Wells may be nearing the establishment here, so I will do a brief update, administrative update, and I would, if possible, we should wait for Derek or Lennon, our CFAO, before we discuss the regulations. It wouldn't be absolutely necessary, but he may be able to provide some insight that commissioners might need. So let me just do a short general update. It's not very long, but I'll give it a try. I wanted to just let the commission know, I know you've probably experienced part of this, but we have, and also I think be helpful for the public benefit that might visit the commission, that we've transferred the commission reception to a more secure space attached to our licensing division on the 10th floor. And we've also been successful in hiring a full-time receptionist for that area, and she will begin in December, so we'll be able to permanently staff the new area. We've also had our new fiscal analyst that has reported to work as a member of our fiscal team, and we have received responses to our new space RFP and are in the process of checking out the new potential sites for new office space and reviewing their proposals. We plan to be moved into our new space still by September 2014. In addition, our consultants are in-house consultants for our new licensing system. They're in the process of helping our licensing team define the business requirements and then subsequently our licensing system. We're also in the process of developing our slot and casino project monitoring approach, and the resources necessary, most likely external, to help us monitor that each of those projects as we move forward. With that, we plan to post our intention to seek these services publicly, so it's folks are aware that we're going to pursue that kind of a service. That is my administrative update. What I could do is just, I'll give a brief introduction on our
Yeah, I think we should.
regulation update, our financial regulation update, and then we can
Right.
see where we are and possibly see if Karen is here yet. But let me just refer you to tab 8B.
8B.
If we're at tab 8B, what is included in here, our CFAO, Derek Lennon, has included a memorandum that summarizes the related section of statute, which is section 56. It's included the existing regulation, which is 205 CMR 121.0, which we also briefly discussed at our last commission meeting, a concept of a draft proposal for assessment process, and a summary of the proposal itself. The Commission's existing regulation imposes license fees that recover operating costs not otherwise paid from the licensees with the award of the license. The new proposal would add a new assessment process which is designed to recover future costs through an assessment of the licensees based on an approved budget before each fiscal year, and projections which would be based on the actual expenses and revenue during the fiscal year. Essentially, each licensee would be responsible for license fees in addition to the statutory fee with award of a license and assessments once they become a license. We are recommending the foundation of this assessment be included in a regulation that we will use internal policy to guide the process to ensure consistency. In this process, I'd be happy to discuss any of the documents in particular or hold off a little bit and wait a little later, but if the commissioners had questions, I would be glad to take a shot at them, and then we can ask Derek to provide any clarification that I might not be able to give you.
Commissioner Zuniga, do you have
No, I
a
think,
question or elaboration?
well, no, I'll just elaborate. I think this approach is a good one, it's balanced. It will allow us to manage our cash flow and that of our applicants a little bit better. We do have and retain the ability of assessing upfront on a yearly basis, but rather than taking that upfront, we could assess it quarterly or periodically, and I think that's good flexibility.
I only had one question. It strikes me that this is my question doesn't undercut that. This is a good approach. But the statute says that the $600 fee is to be assessed as of July 1st, the machines that are authorized as of July 1st, and then pro rata for any machine authorized thereafter. And I gather that the pro rata means per month, but I'm not confident of that, which would mean that if that's right, it would mean that it was basically $50 a month for any machine that was authorized, $50 for each month left in the fiscal year as of the time a post-July 1st machine was authorized. Is that consistent with the way we're approaching this?
That's consistent with our interpretation of
Okay.
how it would be applied
Okay.
as well, yes.
So if we give a casino license in April, January of this year, a slots license in January of this year, then basically we'd get $300 per machine as the licensing fee.
Yep.
Right?
Yes, because January has, yep, that
We'd
would be
have
6 months.
left. so
Oh,
we'd have
excuse
that.
me, yes, I would. I
Right.
agree, yes.
Right, okay.
Yeah, that's an easier read. There's another read to that particular section that would point to our assessment pro rata among all applicants. But because it's per slot machine, I think that's redundant to call a pro rata if it's per slot machine.
Right.
That would effectively be pro rata.
It would have to be pro rata per, in terms of calendar year.
That's right.
Yeah. Or fiscal year, yeah.
I just want to clarify, I mean, I know this, I think we've talked about this before, but it's very important that all the applicants have this right, that among other things, what's being said here is that we will be assessing our operating costs within a month of the time licenses are awarded. And we, in fact, in this fiscal year, we're anticipating, if everything stays on schedule, that there will be something like $4 million assessed on licensees. And the following year, our full operating costs will be assessed on licensees, which will be somewhere in the $15 to $20 million range, or maybe possibly more. We're still working on our budgets. But we do know that in some of our applications, that element was not included in the cash flows, and we wanted to make absolutely sure that there's no misunderstanding. Everybody knows that the operating costs will be assessed on the licensees. That's not unusual. But we want to make absolutely sure that everybody's ready, that it starts right after we award the licenses.
Mr. Chairman, that also brings up another point that I meant to emphasize, but I neglected, is that one thing as we went through this process, it seems very clear from the statute that the costs of expanded gaming in Massachusetts are to be borne by the applicant's licensees. That seems to be very clear. So that was part of the foundation. And I think your emphasis is that's what we're trying to deliver. We have some work here to make sure that any regulation that moves forward is going to be clear and that the two regulations work together.
Right.
But the idea is that with award of the license, there would be a fee attached that would cover the operation costs for the commission, and that we would establish an assessment cost that would be based on approved budget that would then carry out through the subsequent years,
Right.
which would be reassessed essentially based on actual cost about January of each year. And that may, again, result in an additional bill to the applicant or to the licensees at that point from there.
Right. Right, exactly. The only thing that people may not have understood was that this will be starting when the licenses are awarded, not when the casino starts to operate, because our operating expenses have to be up and running. This includes the Public Health Trust Fund, too. We have to spend money out of the Public Health Trust Fund in anticipation of the beginning of operations. So this will start with licensing, not with operations, which I know you know.
That's correct. That's what the proposal would do.
That was the message we're trying to convey here. Okay, anything else on this?
Our next task would be to try to put final touches on this and move it before it could.
Great. I think
Forward
this
to the
is
commission.
terrific. I'm glad, yes.
Would we put this out for public comment?
I think we had anticipated that we would, now that you mention it, right?
Yeah, well, and if we were to draft this as a regulation, it would go through the normal regulatory process,
regulatory
too.
process,
Yeah, so it would be
yeah.
a public comment in that
Right,
venue as
right.
well.
But for our applicants or anybody else who's interested, this is on the website probably now, right? Or it certainly will be, right? So this can be looked at by anybody now, and we're interested in feedback on this as we write.
And I may add that our existing regulation gives us the authority of our intention to assess as soon as a license is awarded. The additional language here allows us to be more flexible relative to the timing of those assessments, quarterly, monthly, as opposed to annually. But just wanted to dovetail into your previous comment.
Correct, and it establishes a process that we can use. in the
Establishes
future.
a process as well, which is very important.
But it also establishes, which I don't think our regulation does, a refund mechanism for somebody that overpays, in effect, as is likely when the first, when the slots license is issued, and if fewer than three casino licenses are issued. There may have to be some adjustment down the road that results in a refund for overpayment.
That's
did I
correct.
read that correct?
Yep, that's correct.
Mr. Lennon has
Mr. Lennon?
joined me.
Sorry we swapped around
We'll-
schedules on you.
I apologize for
But I
being late.
think your compatriot handled the job fine.
Okay.
Any other questions about this? No. All right, I think everybody said this is great, and this is exactly where we want to go. We have invited applicants and anybody else to give us feedback on this if they like, but you're going to move forward.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Director Wells.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners.
Good morning.
I believe I'm going to be brief this morning. I just wanted to update the members of the commission where we are in the investigatory process. As I'm sure you are aware, we have 2 more applicants for casino licenses yet to go through the suitability process. We are completing the MGM report right now. I expect that to be done shortly and get to the commissioners. We are tentatively scheduling that hearing for December 9th. And I have been in contact with counsel for MGM, and that's agreeable to them, so that is the expectation going forward. We do the MGM suitability hearing on the 9th. We've set aside the 10th if we need to go into the next day, but I'm hopeful we can complete that on that first day, but we'll have the second day if necessary. And I've also been in contact with counsel for Wynn and their application. My expectation is that we will have the hearing for Wynn suitability on December 16th, going into December 17th if necessary. And that's agreeable with them, and we are completing the report and finishing that up in due course. So that's really where we are, and so I expect everything will be done by the end of the year. With the vote in Milford, the Crossroads application and the second piece that they had submitted to us is now no longer relevant as they lost the vote, so that's no longer an issue. And then I'll be in contact with Suffolk regarding their operator and expect to have a conversation with them about that process going forward.
And they have as yet given us no firm direction on this.
I'm in contact with them, but I have not gotten any confirmation about that yet. And once I do, we will proceed and notify the commission as the status.
But they're very much aware of the fact that you've got other things on your plate.
Yes,
and
so
time-
that they are aware there is a December 31st deadline, and that the calendar is filling up, and with folks being on vacation through the holidays, they are aware of that, and I believe they are acting accordingly.
Okay, great.
So that's where we are. I have nothing further. Any questions?
Like John, I mean, not very many people know what a huge task this has been from an organizational standpoint, from a stakes standpoint, from a pressure standpoint, and you and the troopers and our consultants have done an incredible job to get all this together. You know, it's a very big deal. Thank you.
I appreciate that.
Thank you, Director.
Thank you.
Fortunately, you're single with no kids.
Yeah.
Oops, no, wrong. Do we have the UAW here yet? And Jill? I thought he was always here. Isn't that Barry?
Was here early.
No? All right. Well, then I think we only have one issue left, right? Other than the UAW presentation?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, and they're not here. So is that going to be Mr. Hawk? Because he was. But... Oh, okay, so there are other people. All right. All right. So let's try very hard to make it a half-hour lunch out of respect for everybody's schedules. We'll try to convene at 12:15 or shortly thereafter, do the UAW quickly to get that over with, and then we'll do the Suffolk Downs conversation. We are temporarily adjourned.